Welcome to the Hope for the Journey podcast, a weekday wellness tips program presented by Dr. Denise Marie, Third Order Carmelite. Dr. Denise is a professionally qualified clinical psychologist, health and wellness professor and coach, counselor, plus medicinal herbs educator. Each Hope for the Journey podcast features a well-being key from Dr. Denise, helping you meet your self-care needs for living well. Listener discretion is advised because this and other Hope for the Journey episodes may contain discussions surrounding behavioral health problems and other actual potentially triggering topics.
Hello and good day, everyone. Welcome back to Hope for the Journey. I hope things are coming along okay for you today. This is Dr. Denise speaking, and on today's episode of the podcast, I will be speaking about taking alone time, which is a psychological self-care key for living well.
Now, to begin this podcast, I have to start with making an important distinction. There is a difference between spending healthy, solitary time and loneliness. There is a difference between intentionally seeking out alone time, which would be a peaceful solitude in pursuit of life strengthening, versus being alone and feeling lonely without someone as a type of unwanted situation. The art of positive alone time is worth pursuing. And this solo time that I'm talking about today can be either spent in quiet stillness, away from noise, and or in solo activity that is quiet and without distraction. And you might be wondering, if this is not a practice that you are used to, what exactly would be the central benefits and value of solitude for both your soul and your body? So here is a small list of the benefits of taking alone time. First, it is for psychological wellness, a time for listening, for insight, wisdom, even answers about ourselves, answers about our lives. It's an opportunity even for healing to come. Solitude is something that can reduce stress so that you do not find yourself being overwhelmed by it. Taking time alone is for your thoughts to come and be pondered in the face of hair-raising life events. It's a time where stress is reduced so that you can focus and have productive self-talk in a more calmed down situation. Stress is reduced in a way because you can gain more clarity about how to handle the stresses going on around you. So beside for psychological wellness and stress reduction, solitude also is a chance to recharge for energy that you need, a time of restoration, so that you can respond to life's everyday challenges in an active way with the needed energy.
Taking time alone also can decrease excessive emotional charges. In other words, excessive fears or sorrows or anger or other feelings that may be piling up, so that you have a chance to feel through these emotions and other feelings, pass through them healthily instead of avoiding or even escaping from them to the point that you find yourself suppressing such emotional charges. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to either listen to or watch it, I do have a podcast posted which is called Feeling Your Feelings, which goes over this matter of healthily handling excessive emotional charges. And with this healthy approach of feeling through and passing through your feelings instead of holding them at arm's distance with the danger of suppression, you will be in a position to help prevent symptoms like anxiety and/or depression from breaking out. Making time for solitude also can increase the effectiveness of your work, your occupational activities. It can even prevent burnout because in this solitary time, you have a chance to evaluate your habits when you realize that you are being way too busy all the time. And of course, in solitary time, you can open yourself up better to hearing the voice of God. And when I talk about taking alone time, I'm not looking at alone time as a luxury for some, but actually something which is needed by all people. It's not about making a decision to spend time being lazy for laziness. Not at all. In fact, there is even behavioral health research which confirms that there are a significant number of health advantages of you taking solo time. For example, there are clinical studies finding that people who cultivate alone time actually do report more of the following than people who do not make regular time for solitude. This is an interesting list. So people who cultivate alone time report, first, more personal happiness, less life stress, increased creativity or ideas that are innovative, less depressive symptoms, particularly in adolescence, improved relationships with others, which for some of you might seem a little bit ironic, but it's a time of comfortably retreating from your relationships, socially speaking, and then reconnecting with these relationships so that your bonds with those you're close to do not suffer from having your own just being so involved in them that you don't have a chance to step back and process things relationship wise. So it actually is a time of solitude which can be of value for keeping your relationships healthy. And lastly, in the research on taking alone time, I wanted to point out that investigations have shown that with solitude there is enhanced empathy or feeling for the emotions and the problems of other people. So, taken as a whole, we can say that having brief periods of time being in our own company is a rather good thing. So I have a question for you at this point in today's podcast, a question for your self-reflection. Are you setting aside enough time for your own solitude? If not, how much solitude time is needed, this type of dedicated time? A time to schedule in some calendar time for periods of tranquil time alone. My answer to this question is about the value of setting an intermediate amount of time. Actually, this is what the research shows. Not too little and not too much time being alone, because you could imagine that too much time being alone could be a problem. So my personal recommendation is for people to cultivate a routine of about 3/4 of an hour each day. However, if right now you can only find it being possible to squeeze in 20 minutes a day, I say go for that 20 minutes. And you might also be thinking, when during the day is it best to take this alone time? And my advice is for you to select a time of day when you can be without distractions around you, especially in the morning or at night. And then there is the matter of how to take this solitary time. What would be healthy ways to enjoy spending this time alone? And of course, this would differ from person to person, but I have a few recommendations to make. One way to spend this solo time would be reading a book on a topic that you like, or even listening to an audiobook of your choice. Another way to take this alone time out would be listening to music that you enjoy. Then there is also the possibility that you can play a musical instrument or even begin learning one. And with all those YouTube videos which teach instrument playing, there certainly are a lot of different opportunities to make this happen. Another healthy way to enjoy spending time in solitude would be praying. This is a chance to open yourself to a friendship with God. And of course, praying is simply conversing with Him and waiting to hear what He would have to say in return. Another way to take this solitary time would be doing artwork of any kind that you feel you can do, even try, and then enjoy it, because certainly doing art is a very special opportunity. I would also recommend working on any pet project that you have that you wouldn't otherwise have large blocks of time for. So the idea of even chipping away a little bit at your pet project would really be worthwhile. So in looking at what I've been discussing today on this podcast, taking a bit of daily time to do a favorite thing alone, and or even just spending some of that solo time, just simply being alone in stillness, is not only good for your health, but it can actually be quite fun. As a whole, spending a little solitary time each day is a needed gift of self-care. Next, I would like to move our attention over to a couple of examples of people who have found significant value in regularly carving out solo time. The first person is Rose Hawthorne, also known as Mother Mary Alfonsa. Rose Hawthorne is the daughter of famous American writer Nathaniel Hawthorne, and also the founder of a community of religious sisters named the Dominican Sisters of Hawthorne. Rose is known for her devotion to taking care of both men and women who have been diagnosed with severe cancer. Rose Hawthorne came to realize that taking contemplative time is such a good thing because she could better serve those sick in body and soul precisely because of the benefits received from having these regular times of solitude. Another example of someone who has recognized the worth of spending solo time is Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth is an actor who I read indicated during the past year became focused on quieting his mind and deciding to be a person who incorporates more solitude into his life with the goal of improving both his psychological health and his physical health. And to use his own words, a time without any outside voice or stimulation and making time for stillness. So I believe you can tell that both Rose Hawthorne's and Chris Hemsworth's practices of scheduling in consistent alone time is something they recognize is necessary for their living well. In my seeking after a song to feature for our discussion on solitude a piece of music that would support the well-being fortifying value of taking alone time, I was glad to find an upbeat song which rather suitably is called Time for Myself. It is by a singer simply named and lovely named Josephine, and the song is from her album of the same name, Time for Myself, created with the Ocean Music Group. From the internet, I was able to capture a few of the nicely relevant song lyrics that go like this. Sometimes I just need to find some time for myself, with nobody else. All these issues, they're no good for my health. Until I'm on overload and I'm overthinking. Sometimes I need just a little time for myself. As you can see in this song, Josephine has actually provided a good overview of the rationale for today's podcast. The lyrics agree that taking alone time has worth for better living. So if you haven't yet put a little time for yourself into practice, why not come up with a plan to make it a piece of your daily wellness routine? To encourage you at this point toward a little extra care for you in your day-to-day wellness, I am featuring the following in this podcast: a couple of health foods and plants connected to our psychological self-care key of the day, taking alone time. Though please remember my words about going over these indicated health foods and plants with your doctor before trying to use them, in service of not overlooking your particular health situation. So I am reviewing these health foods and plants here for the benefit of your setting aside that ideal 3/4 of an hour of daily solitude time for the good of your soul and body. I start by mentioning artichoke leaf. Artichoke is actually a type of thistle. It is rich in a variety of antioxidants, and it may also improve several aspects of health, including having value for heart health, liver health, and digestive health. I particularly like drinking artichoke tea. And there is sage, which is a highly aromatic herb, and there are evidence-based benefits of sage for the wellness of the brain, our mood, memory, oral, and heart health. Not only can sage be dried for our use as a food condiment, but sage can also be sipped as a lovely herbal tea. And there is cranberry, which is reported to support psychological well-being as well as help wellness in a good number of ways, such as having anti-aging properties. And of course, it is a nice energy enhancer. Though I would still point out the good of discussing such herbs with your doctor so that your unique health status is taken into account. Otherwise, I am blessed to draw some attention to artichoke, sage, and cranberry at this juncture. As gifts of nature, they might serve as sources of assistance in your efforts to set aside that daily alone time. I also have a brief item to share with you today. It is a post-it I have written up to support you in taking steps to put into place a practice of taking solo time. So I hope you will take to heart these words from a friend, actually adapted from Mark chapter 6, verses 31 to 32. Come by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest, to a solitary place. Next, I have one additional tip-off for you today. A phone app in favor of making that needed time for yourself, especially aimed at strengthening psychological well-being. This app has this title, Talk to Myself, a self-talk app enabling you to meet and connect with yourself. This app is designed and developed by the Horizon Corporation. The online description for this Talk to Myself app reads, the app allows users to capture their emotions, perspectives, and knowledge in the most user-friendly way, so that they can reflect on their life with a clear and broader lens. I think this app could be a plus in your toolkit, especially the one toward enhancing both emotional and intellectual wellness. So in addition to this particular Talk to Myself app, you can keep in mind that there are other avenues of help available appearing on our Hope for the Journey podcast resource center, located on Instagram at Cause for Hope. And to close this evening's discussion, I am pleased to underline how much I appreciate this podcast time to go over today's subject matter with you, to share about the psychological self-care key of taking alone time. And please know that I personally wish you more hope for the journey of greater well-being.
The Hope for the Journey program airs weekday evenings from 7:45 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Instagram and YouTube. Dr. Denise thanks you for listening to her Community Wellness podcast and wishes you to keep in mind that there is cause for hope of more well-being.